Franklin D. Roosevelt once said, "Real estate cannot be lost or stolen, nor can it be carried away. Purchased with common sense, paid for in full, and managed with reasonable care, it's about the safest investment in the world." And real estate is what we do. This is the Realtors Radio Network. There's no sense in overcomplicating real estate. And if you're a first-time home buyer, an investor, or a real estate agent, you're about to get useful, practical, and smart advice on every facet of real estate. Welcome to the Realtors Radio Network. Now your hosts, Santos Garcia, Marcos Suarez, and Dawn McCullough.
Welcome to Realtors Radio Network. Today we have our multi-episode guest, I should say. You're the only one, by the way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so far.
Wow.
And,
okay.
So we're happy to have you here, Nik. Nik Agharkar is an attorney, tax attorney, and wealth advisor. And today we have a few questions. We wanted to talk about LLCs and a few other things and related to that, right?
Yeah, I love it. I love talking about real estate because it's one of the biggest loopholes in the tax code.
Right.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me again.
Mm-hmm.
Of course. So let's dive right into it. So, we asked some of our listeners, some are real estate professionals and some are consumers, just kind of what questions they have about LLCs and that kind of thing. So one thing that seemed to be asked the most was whether someone should buy a property in an LLC. And maybe it's multi-layered for a second. So should you buy a property in an LLC? And then if you are buying a property in an LLC, should it be one per property? Should it just be one blanket LLC?
Yeah.
So tell us about that.
Yeah, let's step back first and define what we're talking about, right? LLC is a limited liability company. So it does exactly that. It limits your liability, and it limits your liability just to the assets within that company that you're forming. Mm-hmm. This was created by states, right, and adopted by all 50 states to give the small business owner some of that protection, right? Because before this, there was just being a sole proprietor where you just run a business, right? You're just a business owner, that's it. And all of your assets are at risk then if you're running a business. So, for example, if you're running a deli, someone comes in, slips and falls, they can take your house. So that seemed unfair, right? And I agree. And so that's what the limited liability company was set up to do. In law school, my corporations professor, there were some people in the class that were a little bit annoyed, right? Oh, so you just fill out this paperwork and then what? You get all this protection. It's like, yeah, it's great. Right. That's what we're doing here, right? So, it is somewhat, legal magic. But what it does do, again, is protect you from liability. So now if we think about that in the real estate context, should you buy an LLC in any should you buy a property in an LLC? It really depends on your assets, right? Because what are we trying to protect? We're trying to protect your own stuff, right, outside of the company. So if you really just own one house and it's not worth that much, maybe you got one car and you've got a rental property, do you have to have an LLC? Probably not. Right? I mean, what's the likelihood that they're going to have some sort of claim that's going to exceed the actual value of the rental property that you're in? You already have insurance, right? If you're renting, right? Hopefully, you absolutely should. If you don't, right? So you're probably okay there. But when it gets to now, I'm buying multiple properties. Now we should think about setting up a management company. We should think about, and to your point, siloing each of those properties. Because if we think about, again, that structure, the limited liability company, everything within the company is at risk. So if you have 3 properties in one LLC and something happens at one property, that contaminates all of them, right? Because so all of that then is available to, let's say, that one person that slips and falls at this property can take all properties, right? So that's why if you are going to do this, it probably makes sense for someone that has a multiple real estate portfolio and wants to protect each of them individually, right? Really depends on sort of your risk appetite and what your overall assets are generally.
Sure. It's like, you don't want to keep everything under one umbrella. You just want to let each property have its own umbrella to be protected, it's shielded against issues that another. I mean, why should that seems unfair, really, if you think about it. Why should someone go after everything if something only happened in the one particular property? It's true. It's the best.
Yeah.
It's the best of every world, really.
Yeah, and then, well, even on the sort of think about it from the commercial perspective and the business perspective, you set up then a management company that sits over top all of your properties. Your properties pays the management company, but it's really you. So you're now managing the property. You're doing that all of yourself anyway, but now you've started a business that does it. And so now we can run more expenses through that business. We can then partition out the expenses for each of these houses, take the depreciation. There's a lot of additional tax benefits that come along with setting up this kind of structure as well. Yeah.
Well said. I was going to say the same thing.
Right?
Okay,
That's what I was thinking.
No, well, this is a question that comes up a lot, especially, I think we're kind of seeing some people, dip their toe in the water on flipping or buying a rental property for the first time, and it's almost one of the first questions they ask. For me, I just would say, talk to your tax advisor or your attorney or both of them, to see, is it beneficial for you to do so?
Right.
And then the other part to it is the lending side of it, right? Will they let you buy it in an LLC? Obviously, it needs to be investment, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And your LLC has to be able to get insurance. So before you do all of these things, you need to explore that you can actually close on the deal once you set up the LLC, right? So your LLC has to be set up correctly. It has to be able to get insurance. It has to be able to, you have to have all the formation documents, the operating agreement, everything done so you can go out and sign agreements in the LLC's behalf. Because otherwise, you're still just a sole proprietor, right? So one of the things that we talk about in the tax world is that a single member LLC is what the IRS calls a disregarded entity. This phrase on the internet has caused a lot of confusion because a lot of people then say things like, oh, what's the point then? What's the point of a single member LLC? For the liability protection.
Right.
That still is there, right? Now, it may not be an amazing tax savings vehicle just setting up an LLC, but it's primarily about the liability protection. Now, an LLC that's a single member operates just like a sole proprietor. You can still run expenses through the business. You can still do things that a business does from a tax perspective and take advantage. There are some things that you can't, for example, payroll, that you need to be elected to be taxed as an S corporation. But otherwise, there are still tax benefits that you can take advantage of as a sole proprietor or as a single member LLC. But just because the IRS says it's a disregarded entity does not mean that it doesn't protect you from liability. It absolutely does.
That's great to know.
That's a good point,
Yeah.
Good. All right. Well, kind of leading into our next question. So at some point last year, it was passed that real estate agents can get paid through an LLC. Mm-hmm. It's not completely official yet. It hasn't, started yet. But there's a lot of buzz in the industry. How do I, number one, how do I set up an LLC? Number two, what are the benefits of doing it? Or why would somebody do it versus not? Is there somebody who shouldn't do it versus should? How should it be set up? How should it be taxed? So I'm going to let you handle, kind of all the layers of that.
Yeah, so that there's a lot to unpack there. So first, in terms of formation, the actual setup isn't that difficult. You can just go on the Secretary of State's website and actually fill out the forms yourself. It's pretty straightforward in terms of the information they need. You go to the IRS website, get an EIN. You could do that yourself. What I would not recommend doing yourself is then creating the operating agreement. Even if you're a single member LLC, it's a good idea to have an operating agreement for down the line. If you might get a loan, you might want a credit card. Banks, institutions, they want to see that you're a real business, right? Mm-hmm. That you're not just another guy on the internet trying to make a buck, right? This is an actual business. I'm official. I'm all set up correctly, right? That's the setup piece. In terms of why you would do it, again, we talked about the limitation on liability, right? If you're, as a realtor, you are operating just in your own name, all of your assets are at risk, right? So if something goes wrong with one of your clients, with a house, with something that you've done, technically everything you own is at risk. But if you now set up this LLC that's just your real estate LLC, whatever that real estate LLC has in the bank, which may not be much, right? That's the only thing that's at risk. And why do I say that real estate LLC, it may not have that much? Well, the thing is that what we're doing is really creating this legal fiction where the LLC will pay you, right? So it flows through to you ultimately. But once that money leaves the LLC, it's no longer at risk, right? It's so long as you're signing all the paperwork in the LLC name. And this is where people get tripped up, right? They sign something in their own name. Never do that, right? If you're going to work in real estate and set up your LLC, you're always signing on behalf of the LLC, right? So long as we're doing that, that's all that's at risk is whatever is in the LLC. And if you've been taking regular distributions, if you've been basically, you get paid through the LLC, you put a portion away for taxes, you distribute the rest to yourself, pay taxes on that, you're done. There's very little money left in the LLC that you can go after. That's huge, especially for realtors that are killing it, right? Some of you guys are making millions of dollars a year. You have a lot of nice stuff, nice houses, nice suits, nice everything, right? Nice watches. You don't want to lose that.
See how he's looking at you with all this?
I didn't see that. I didn't see him looking at me.
So, you don't want to lose all that stuff, right? Yeah. And so we want to keep that separate from your business because your business does take on more risk than your personal life. So that's sort of how you set it up and why you set it up. Now, as to the tax advantages, people think that an LLC is not an S corp or it's not a C corp or it's not a sole proprietor. An LLC is all of those things. So an LLC can be a sole proprietor, it can be an S corporation, it can even be a C corporation. It's just a matter of how you elect to be taxed. I would never recommend someone set up an LLC and then be taxed as a C corp. That would be very stupid. You're getting double taxation, basically. Because the corporate rate, you pay the corporate tax, and then you also pay tax on any distributions. So don't do that. But electing as an S corporation can have a really profound benefit. Now, to do this, you need enough money. Why do you need enough money? Because one of the things for the S corp that you must do is payroll. You have to set up payroll. Don't do it yourself. Go find the company like
Nik.
Yeah, I don't do payroll, thank God. But Paychecks, right? Counterpoint's another good one. Paylocity. There are loads of these payroll companies that will do this for you. But pay yourself regularly. Why? Because there's self-employment tax. If you remember, anyone that got a W-2, their first W-2, FICA, took a big chunk out of it, right? What's FICA? It's the insurance program. It's for Social Security and Medicare, right? Medicare and Medicaid. It's 15.3%. That's what it always is. Now, you split that with your employer when you're a W-2, so the employer pays 7.65, you pay 7.65, we go on our way, right? As a small business owner, by yourself, you are wholly responsible for that entire 15.3%, right? Mm-hmm. In addition to paying ordinary income. So if you're an LLC and you take a distribution, you're paying 15.3% off the top in self-employment tax, and then you're paying ordinary income tax on it as well. However, the beauty of an S corporation and setting up payroll for it is the 15.3% only goes to the payroll. So now if you take a salary of, say, $70,000 a year, well, sure, you're going to pay 15.3% in ordinary income on that $70,000, but those $1 million distributions you're taking are taxed only at your ordinary income rate. And if you can work to reduce that ordinary income bracket, well, you're making out, right? Because you're no longer saddling this large chunk of money with 15.3% and then also ordinary income. So there are ways to do this, but the broader understanding here is it's just an election. You're still very much an LLC. This is just forms you submit to the IRS explaining how you want to be taxed, right? And it creates different paperwork. The other thing is that I know a lot of you realtors work in teams, right? You can set up a partnership as well. Now, your tax is a partnership. You can't take a payroll in a partnership. But it can add some benefits because you can both then pass income through. Actually, usually at K-1 issues, most partnerships don't file even until October of the next year. So there are benefits to all of these different structures and in different ways. But the biggest benefit to anyone starting a business is really thinking about the difference between a W-2 earner and a small business owner. A W-2 earner, we just talked about it, pays their taxes first. FICA comes out immediately. You never see that money, right? A small business owner pays their expenses first. So they have to pay for, the car, the real estate license, the gas, the mileage, all of those expenses come off the top. Then we pay taxes on whatever is left over. This is the biggest beauty of business ownership and the biggest tax benefit of an LLC. It's that I can run a lot of expenses, a lot of things I'm going to do anyway for my work through the business, and now I don't have to do that and then pay taxes on that money. I've already spent that money. I only pay taxes on whatever is left over from what I made. This is it's a huge benefit. And this is the biggest benefit to realtors, and why they should set up the LLC is because you guys spend a ton of money. You spend a ton of money on marketing, on advertising, on mileage. I can't imagine how much miles.
On golf?
Marketing, not golf. Marketing, right? We need to categorize the expenses correctly.
Right. That's a client.
It's a client dinner, right? It's a client meeting.
Right.
Wait,
Just happen to be
what
outdoors.
if you sponsor a golf hole? What if you're a real estate business? That's what he was talking about.
Yes, absolutely. So those kinds of expenses.
But you can use that 15% on what's left over, not the entire.
Well, exactly, right.
Getting.
And well, not only that, but it's really the whole tax bill, right? So the other beauty of an S corporation is payroll is an expense. So if your salary is $70,000, that's an expense, right? So that comes off the top. That's not also taxed then as on the distribution money.
Right.
It's already taxed, right? So that's an expense. So again, all of these things come off the top, and then you only pay taxes on what's left over. That's the beauty. Yeah.
So let me ask you this: knowing that this is coming in the near future, would you recommend everyone get an LLC, all realtors get an LLC and get paid through, or kind of structure that way? Or is there kind of a threshold of because there's a lot of people that there's a lot of people that are in the business and, maybe it didn't take off as well as they'd like, or they can't dedicate enough time to it.
And some people are only focused on, my partner already makes X amount. As long as I make 50 or 40 a year, I'm fine. I'm happy. I'm just spending money for me. Or should it be anybody, whether they make $30,000 a year or $400,000 a year? It's.
Well, I mean, let's take the example first of the person that is married to a high earner, right? But is a real estate professional, and now they're operating in their own name. Remember what we talked about? That liability attaches to you and your spouse, right? Because your spouse is always liable for your debts too. So what's going to happen here if something goes wrong? Guess what? It's not just your stuff. It's your spouse's stuff too, right? So if your spouse is a high earner and you guys have a lot of nice things and you go out as a real estate professional and you make a mistake, you screw up and your insurance is going to cover it, you better be ready to have that conversation with your spouse that, hey, you know what? I put us at risk. I put everything at risk. So in that scenario, I would say, yes, absolutely get the LLC. For those just starting out, probably not much benefit, right? And probably a little bit more of a time suck than you need right now, because you should be focusing on crafting your skills, working on your sales presentations, and actually working on the business,
That's
right?
a very good point.
We can work on getting all of that stuff set up as you get more mature into the business. But if you're just starting out, and I tell this even for entrepreneurs who come to me and say, shouldn't I trademark this? And we need to get this logo done. And shouldn't we do... Focus on actually making money first, right? You're focused on all of this other legal niceties and, fancy designs.
Yeah.
Does it even sell?
Yeah.
Do you even make any money?
Right.
I mean, the problem is if you've spent all this money doing all of these things, and really look, the LLC is super important if you have a lot of assets, right? So we're not really talking about those people. We're talking about the people just starting out, maybe 24, 25, right? This is their first career. They're ready to go, but they're thinking, oh, maybe I should set all this other stuff up. Really, you're just procrastinating.
Yeah.
Let's be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
You're wasting your time on things that sound nice and that you should do. Yeah. You should just focus on selling. Focus on building the business and get the money in the door. Once the money comes in the door, now we can talk about, all right, let's structure this correctly.
Let's didn't tell him to say any of this, by the way. I know there are going to be some people.
We keep doing this.
He paid him ahead of time. We know.
So here's
it's
the
a
thing.
write-off.
Here's the thing. I have a couple
kidding.
of 50-plus-year-olds and I have a couple of 60-plus-year-olds brand new to the business who are asking me, should I get an assistant? I need a coordinator of my own. I need this. I said, you haven't sold the house yet.
Yep.
Yeah.
What are you working? Let's learn how to fill out a contract first, and then we'll worry about what you need later. I can't believe it. So I'm glad that you said it before I said it, because learn your craft.
You're in this business for commissions, not to set up an LLC. That's my business, right?
Right.
So I mean, you want to focus on what's important, what's right in front of you, right? You can come to me later on when you're making, the $50,000, $60,000 commission checks, and we can have a long conversation around how we should structure these things. But until it's actually in your hand, it's not real, right?
Yep.
Work, go to work, get it done, get some money in the door, and as that happens, okay, now we got to make some changes. Mm-hmm. But that's what I would say to those on the younger side. But I would say that anyone working in the real estate as a professional that has assets that they would rather not be risking because of their business,
right,
they should form an LLC.
Yeah. Perfect.
And I think, too, now thinking about what you're saying, maybe, get in the business, get things rolling, in the beginning, and sometimes, throughout your real estate career, right, there are peaks and valleys, but for the most part, once you've really gained traction, you kind of know what to expect, maybe year after year, and maybe at that point, if you know you're going to make it or not, maybe it's for you, maybe it's not, then at that point, maybe set up the LLC.
Yeah, I would say get a couple years under your belt, right? And even those that now are thinking about, should I elect as an S Corp, go back, look at the historical data. What are your last 3 years like, right? What does the revenue look like, not only from a yearly perspective, but go month to month, quarter by quarter. What quarters were low, what quarters were high? Look for patterns. Because what I tell people with uneven income is you want to set up a buffer account. You want to start putting money into that buffer account for those big months. So maybe you have a $130,000 a month. Take half of it, put it away. Put it in a buffer account. That's either a CD or a savings account, bonds, something where it can grow but be safe. This will come in handy for those $30,000 months, right? That inevitably happen when the market slows down. It's like clockwork. But if you can look at your data and look at the past 3 years, then you know what to expect. You know that these things are seasonal. You know these things are cyclical. So, okay, it's all right if I don't have a big month in, what's usually the biggest down month for realtors usually.
Down? Probably
maybe
February, January.
Or I was going to say maybe August.
February. Right? Yeah, August, February. That's what I was thinking, right? That's probably when there's the least transactions going on. Mm-hmm. August, people are around. February, no one wants to go outside. Mm-hmm. So it totally makes sense that those are going to be our down months. So let's plan for it, right? Okay, those months I'm going to need that buffer, right? I'm going to need to pull from that account. I know I can replenish in April, but again, it takes this kind of planning and forethought, and that's what comes with being a business owner, though. Really have to treat this like a business.
Well said.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Well, what else can you share with us about LLCs?
I'll be talking on July 23rd at the Greater Bergen Realtors. So if you want to come on down, I'm going to give literally this presentation.
Wait, is it June 23rd? July?
No, July 23rd.
Oh, okay.
That's why you haven't heard it yet. Yeah. No, you're like, wait, isn't it like a couple weeks? No, next month. So July 23rd. That's why it probably hasn't been promoted yet. But I'll be talking there about how to set up the LLC, what to think about in terms of how you can use the LLC, pitfalls to watch out for, and then I'll just be around to answer questions. So yeah, come out to that, and we can have this conversation at length.
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. There you go.
I love it.
Yeah.
Santos, you have any questions for him?
No questions. I'm here learning.
I love that we got the exclusive, right? We got a preview of what's to come. We're going to make sure to invite everybody at United over. We'll pack up the
Perfect.
house.
I would love that. Yeah. Awesome.
Fantastic.
All right, guys. Well, this was great.
Good. Yes. I'm happy that we were able to do this again.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you guys for having me.
All right. This is Realtors Radio Network signing off.
Keep an ear out for the next episode of the Realtors Radio Network, where Santos Garcia, Marcos Suarez, and Dawn McCullough share their wealth of real estate knowledge. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, review, and share. Find us on social media at Realtors Radio Network. See you next time on the Realtors Radio Network.